We will now call the special meeting of the Waco City Council on June 29, 2022 to order at 11:02 a.m. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you're here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium to provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. Michelle, is there anyone present who would like to speak on a work session item? So we will now recess the regular session and convene work session with the work session.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Appreciate you all joining us for a special session today. Our opening work session is going to be from our Chief Financial Officer, Nick Sarpy, going to provide us an update on financial management policies, particularly for our enterprise funds. So turn it over to Nick.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
Morning. Today we're going to continue our discussion on the fiscal year 22-23 budget development update with the focus on the financial management policies. As well as the budget calendar. We made some changes or proposed changes to the financial management policies. One of the first changes that we made is the definition of working capital. So last year we'd made a change for budgetary basis and finance basis because they were used to separately and because the calculations would be different. But this year we're just going with one standard definition across the board of working capital, which matches the standard definition that is in every literature out there, which is basically current assets minus current liabilities. And it'll be based off of the audited financial statements. So somebody can pull up the financial statements and know exactly what the definition of working capital is for, or what it should be for, like our water fund or our wastewater fund. Some other changes we made was an emphasis on including minority and women-owned businesses during the bid process, making sure they're included. And then a big change is the general fund assigned fund balance. So the change we're proposing is to allow the city manager and myself, or whoever we designate, to assign fund balance in the general fund. This way, we don't have to come to council. It doesn't slow down the process for completing the annual financial report. We can just do a memo, assign the fund balance, but we'll let you know of any assignments and what they are, so you'll still be in the loop, and any assignments would be based off of direction that council would have given. So the change to the working capital for the utility funds. So in consultation with the utilities and working through this, we've come up with a updated definition using the current definition or the updated definition of working capital. And then we're adding a 2% of tangible capital assets based off the most recently audited financial statements as an additional piece of the working capital. And we're also clarifying that the wastewater fund includes WMRs. From financial reporting, WMRs is rolled into the wastewater fund. This will provide more better resources for in the case of like an emergency with equipment or machinery for the utilities with this 2% of tangible capital assets. All right, some new funds that we're going to add that you'll see in the fiscal year 23 budget. So one of the first funds is the Information Technology Fund, moving it from a department within the general fund to be its separate own internal service fund, since it provides services across the organization. It'll allow us to better track the services that the IT department is providing across the organization, and then it'll provide resources for the regular replacement of their equipment. And then on that same premise is the Proprietary Fund Vehicle Replacement and Equipment Fund, with the goal to fund future replacement vehicles, provides the funding source for those. So on an annual basis, we'll basically fund depreciation, and I'll go into this fund. We also clarified the use of debt for capital expenditure financing to match what we're currently doing. And then we pulled out language to have an additional 15-year forecast beyond the 5 years, which is industry standard. So what are the next steps? So in August, we'll bring a resolution approving the proposed changes to the policy before council. And then budget calendar. So on the 12th, will be before Budget and Audit Committee. We did a slight change, so we'll talk about the fee schedule, and we'll have draft financials for the smaller funds at that meeting, and we'll be sure to get those to you ahead of time. And then the budget team is planning and hoping to be done with the budget by the 15th, but the certified rolls from the county, from MCAT, are not due until the 25th, and given the amount of property that's currently still in protest, that'll have an impact on the final numbers. But the final budget's due on the 29th, and then we'll present the budget to you on the 2nd of August, and we'll set the date for the public hearing on the budget that same date. And then the August 9th Budget and Audit Committee is tentative at this point. And then in August, on the 16th, we'll have the first reading of the ordinance setting departments, and the resolution setting the date for the public hearing and vote on the tax rate. With the adoption of the tax rate, of the budget and the public hearing set for the 30th, which is a special meeting, as well as the second reading of the ordinance setting the departments. And then the tax rate would be on the 6th of September. Any questions?
Holmes over here, yeah. Nick, thanks for the presentation. I like the ideas on where it's going. I think it's great. Can you flip back to the first couple of slides? Because I want to make sure I was catching the drift here. That one's fine. Next. Yeah, that was fine. The next one. Yeah, here's where so on the, is this just for the waste? I like the idea of what we're doing on kind of identifying what working capital is within each utility, and then also the fund balance, keeping track of that. Is this for the wastewater fund only, or is it for all the utility funds?
It's for all four of them, so
Okay.
it'd be for water, wastewater. We're just clarifying that. So from a budget, we adopt a budget for WMARS and wastewater, but from financial reporting, WMARS is part of wastewater. And so we're just clarifying in our write-up that WMARS is part of the wastewater fund.
But this is the first time we've ever kind of targeted a target balance for the reserve. Or am I reading something here that I'm
So
not
the new
seeing?
piece is the 2% of the tangible capital assets.
Okay.
So the 30% is the current policy for the utility funds. So that would be water, wastewater, solid waste, and drainage. And so this is just adding the 2% for all of them as well.
Okay, and not seeing that in context. I think directionally it sounds fine, but not seeing the context of is that a reasonable percentage, or does that fit?
So we've
Over
talked
the
with,
last 3 or 4 years, is that kind of the right number to be at, or what?
and so as far as this number goes, we've talked with our FAA, we've looked at other jurisdictions across the country and what they've done, as well as like what S&P and Moody's kind of recommend, and looking at, ideal bond ratings for certain cities. And we've seen a lot of cities that do this that are like AAA rated, which would be an aspirational goal for the city from a revenue bond perspective. And so it's a cushion to help if we were to do revenue bonds in the future, ensure that if something were to happen, an emergency, a disaster, that from a bondholder perspective, they'd be able to receive payment because we would have resources to go in and fix whatever issue occurred.
Okay. Then what's that next slide? I'm sorry, I don't have I can't toggle here, so.
Very good.
Okay, we're not really doing anything on these utility funds as far as identifying, at least at this stage in this action, targeting reserve balances. That's a whole different issue, right?
For these ones,
Yeah.
for the internal service funds, we don't have a set target. The fund balance in them would be designed for replacement of equipment or vehicles based
Okay.
on whether it's the IT fund or the vehicle and equipment replacement fund. So the proprietary one will probably build up a larger fund balance, but the whole intent, and so our intention on especially the proprietary is to start with any new vehicles we acquire in '23 and start funding depreciation for those ones going forward, not going back on things we already currently own.
Okay, then on this page, what we're talking about is actually creating an IT cost center, independent, basically,
Yep.
right? Which I think makes a lot of sense, because like you can charge all the different other funds into this clearly identified information technology need and geared to that. Does that mean that comes out of, it's
Yeah,
currently in general, right?
Yep, the budget will come out of general and move to this fund.
Okay, I like the way you're doing that, because essentially we're having to pull everything into general anyway and make that same charge. I think it helps us to isolate it and better identify what our true costs are and move them around to the other funds, so that's a good one. I think that's all I had. Nick, good work.
All right, any other questions?
Any other questions for Nick? There's a level of thoughtfulness here that's evident and appreciated, and I think, again, speaking just about kind of these new funds and the ability to really make sure that we're tracking this in a way that I think is going to be more equitable to our taxpayers, ideally in some ways too, is really important. So thanks, Nick. Great. Any other questions for Nick? Comments? Thank you, Nick.
All right, Mayor and Council, our next work session we have for you is an update on our economic development strategic plan. I'm going to invite Kent George, our Director of Economic Development, as well as the representatives from TIP, Theory and Practice Strategies, to the table. That's Jennifer Todd Goins and Tracy McDaniel. They're, of course, our consultant team that's leading us through the creation of a 10-year strategic plan, and they've gotten to work. They've been in WACO all week, and of course they've been working for months now on this project, and I think you're going to be appreciative of what you hear in this interim update. So with that, I'll turn it over. Who's going to lead us off? Kent? Okay, Kent's going to lead us off. I'm going to turn the mic over to him.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor and City Council.
Good morning,
Excited
Kent.
to have this opportunity to present an update on the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Extremely honored to be a small part of this team with their wealth of experience and knowledge that they bring to the city with us, and just excited to present the material to y'all today and get your feedback. With that, I'll turn it over to Tracy.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all here, and we're very happy to be here. I'm Tracy McDaniel, President and Principal of TIP Strategies. We've been working on this project for a while, but the last couple of days we've had several interviews that really built on the number of people we talked to over the last few months. I think we're somewhere between 175, 200. That number is growing because we want to continue to have people have a seat at the table and be engaged in this process. The engagement is a big part of what your team asked us to do. So today we'll provide an overview of the project, some findings of what we've heard in those interviews, our proposed framework that you will have an opportunity to review and get your feedback back to us by July 8th, and any approaches that you want to reach out to us and give us any reactions or responses. We welcome that. And then we'll go through next steps. But the idea is just to really share the quantitative and qualitative data that we've collected over the last few months with you today. So thank you so much. Jen?
Great, thank you, Tracy. We'll start with a project overview, just to kind of level set with our project goal, which is to create an actionable 10-year strategic plan. That plan has several major goals, which include spurring investment and development in WACO, creating an inclusive environment that supports the retention and attraction of businesses, entrepreneurs, and talent. You'll see here some of the specific considerations nested under that goal. I will not read the whole slide to you here, but kind of hit on some of the big categories, which are business attraction and retention. That looks at businesses, industries, incentives. entrepreneurs and small businesses, which really focuses on creating that inclusive environment for those folks, quality of place, looking at not only downtown Waco, but also placemaking strategies in general that will make the city a preferred location for people and businesses. Talent and workforce really looks at creating a workforce skills enhancement strategy. And then also resource alignment, looking at city processes, where is there opportunity to create things that are a little more streamlined? How can we align plans with some of the anchor institutions, such as what the Chambers of Commerce are doing and what Baylor University is also working on. For our schedule, you can see we are right here in the middle of our process. So the first phase, discovery, is really what we focus on is a listening phase. We're trying to get as much information as possible, talk to people, look at plans, look at different initiatives that are happening, and then start adding some of our own data analysis, which we'll share in just a little bit. So we're here, opportunity phase, sharing what we've learned during discovery, and then we'll eventually go into the implementation phase with a little bit more detail to supplement what we're talking about today.
And I'll add, on the implementation phase, the objective there is to really create a timeline over the 5 to 10 years that is an actionable plan for the team. We will be able to assign duties to that action plan. Also, metrics would support it. So we will have an opportunity to work with the economic development team and really come up with an annual action plan that they will be able to work with.
Definitely. To speak a bit about our findings, we'll start by some of the qualitative information. The bubbles here represent, at the time that the PowerPoint developed, the number of people and organizations that we have spoken with to date. You'll see here biggest representation so far is from business, industry, large employers, higher education and workforce, and then also some students and young professionals. This image I expect will be changing every time we are able to speak with you, because we are continuing to speak with more people as we move forward in organizations as well. Quick word cloud of things people love about Waco that we've heard. This should be no surprise to anyone in the room. Community is center at almost every conversation. Folks speak about the quality of life here, the people, kind of loving the smaller town feel, the amenities that Waco offers, and having that relative sense of affordability when you compare to some of the bigger cities in Texas. Some of our key takeaways from stakeholder engagement include greatest strengths being here, that sense of place, the community, the opportunities that people have when they're living in Waco. It's a great place here, and people really want that story to be better communicated, not only to residents, but also people outside of the community. So we're focusing a little bit on how to tell that story and that narrative. There is some tension between growth and preserving Waco as it is today. Specifically, we heard quite a lot about housing affordability, about infrastructure, about economic opportunity, a really strong desire for equitable growth that ensures everyone can access the economic opportunity that will come with growth that we're seeing in Waco. Again, lots of real estate development and redevelopment projects. They are changing the community. Lots of amenities being added, a lot of redevelopment initiatives. That investment is needed, but we heard that it should be done in consultation with residents. I'm really not wanting to feel like any of this growth is happening at their expense. Our final piece here is kind of starting to see that some of the economic tools and strategies are a little bit fragmented. I think that's a side effect of just the speed of change and growth. It seems that so many things are happening so quickly, it can be kind of hard to understand what priorities, roles, and responsibilities may be when there are so many different sort of spinning plates at the same time. We'll go into a bit of quantitative analysis in this next piece. You'll see here, Waco continues to grow. As you're looking at the graph, those red lines represent net population change. So Waco has been growing for quite some time, but where people are coming from is starting to change. When we look at the 90s specifically, a lot of your growth was actually from international migration. Currently, you have a lot more domestic migration that is happening, kind of creating the population change here. When we look at where people are coming from, workers, and this is for workers specifically, are most likely to come from non-MSA areas in Texas. So you can see non-MSA Texas, heaviest net growth, which is represented by the triangles on the graph here. The colors correspond with different educational levels, so you can kind of see the breakdown of your worker population. Second largest source of workers is actually the LA metropolitan area, followed by a number of cities in Texas. We have Killeen, Tyler, McAllen, El Paso, et cetera. And then we start to get into one more out of state, looking at Chicago. So we thought this was interesting to kind of understand, where are you already pulling workers from, and that can help in the telling the story piece of WACO.
Real quick, can you
Yes.
say what non-MSA means?
Yes, so that would be an area that's not in a metropolitan area. So it's typically a smaller town, city, et cetera, in Texas.
Thank you.
When we look at where people go, a lot of workers will leave for other big cities in Texas. I don't think that's a huge surprise. You have quite a number of people going to Dallas, Austin, and Houston, and then a few out-of-state locations that you see here, Denver, Nashville, Charlotte, et cetera. But for the most part, when people leave, they're choosing to stay in state, but to go to bigger MSA areas. We did take a look at housing affordability. This graph shows affordability when you are taking into account the median income and the median priced home in WACO. So currently, WACO would be classified as unaffordable for the median income. We definitely want to keep an eye on this, especially as interest rates increase and housing costs go up. The metro area is a little bit more affordable than WACO City proper, and still, though, a little bit less affordable than the state as a whole. So that is something we'd like to kind of keep in mind as we move forward. You have a very diverse industry base, which is I think very healthy piece of the economy here. Some of the leading industries by number of employment are education, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, and you can see here quite a number of different industries, all within the community. Something that we thought was very interesting is when you look at the last 5 years, industry growth is a little uneven. Most of your industries have grown, which you can see by the orange line. Professional service gaining the most, followed by construction. Not a huge surprise when you're growing so quickly. Property sales and leasing. But we did see a larger loss in manufacturing. Most of that did occur in one single year, 2019, which tends to show us that maybe there was a large employer or two that left. But these are trends to kind of keep an eye on as we move forward in time. Taking all of the information that we heard from the community to date, some of the data that we've looked at, we've identified 5 key opportunities. These are not in any sort of hierarchical order, but we did hear quite a bit. Population, economic growth. I think that's a huge opportunity for WACO going forward. A lot of communities do not have growth. It's very hard to start, and you really just get to keep up with the momentum. Affordable residential and commercial spaces, those do exist here currently. We think it's really important to try and maintain them. Real estate development downtown and along the Brazos, huge opportunity going forward, along with the connectivity. Not only is it WACO's location in Central Texas, but also being along the I-35 corridor, having a regional airport, and having an amazing network of higher education institutions. Not very many communities have the density that you have here, and that's a huge advantage for your workforce. Some of the key challenges that we wanted to highlight include housing inventory and affordability, trying to retain college graduates. I think we saw on the earlier graph, kind of when you see the ages of folks who are leaving, you are losing a number of college graduates. Really wanting to ensure that a supportive ecosystem for small businesses and entrepreneurs doesn't get lost in the growth, and is something that's strengthened as we move forward. Creating workforce and job opportunity alignment. We did hear a little bit about how current workforce may not have the necessary skills to really connect with some of the jobs that are coming, and then coordinating economic development initiatives. There's so many organizations doing really good work. We just want to make sure that they're speaking to each other as much as possible going forward. On the next few slides, we will share our proposed framework. It's divided into 3 parts. The first is a draft vision statement for the plan, which is actually pulled from the city's statement. And we have here, the city of WACO is committed to facilitating a vibrant, inclusive economy where everyone belongs and thrives while moving forward together. And I think that really, starts to get us to our draft guiding principles. These are the guiding principles that we expect to guide our plan. Every goal, strategy, action should point back to these 4 elements, which are competitiveness, making sure the city of WACO is a strong economic competitor, really driving investment and growth through your economic development decisions, looking at economic equity and inclusion, which is facilitating equitable access to resources and opportunity, making sure that everyone can benefit from and access WACO's economic vitality. We have collaboration, and by this, we're looking at building those cross-sector partnerships that align government, business, and community efforts to really create economic opportunity, and then being very future forward. This is a 10-year plan. We want to plan not only for the current growth trajectory, but for long-term growth and prosperity of WACO and for the people who live here. These guiding principles will be informed by our 4 goal areas. First one is business and entrepreneur vitality. That includes looking at attraction, retention, and growing your industries and businesses while also maintaining that inclusive ecosystem for your entrepreneurs and your small businesses. Our second goal area is talent, workforce, and education, really ensuring those accessible pathways to training and to jobs and creating that strong pipeline for your employers. Our third is placemaking and real estate. So really prioritizing that place-based development that can enhance the city of Waco. It will spur additional investment, creating that preferred location for businesses and for people. And then resource alignment, kind of creating alignment between different organizations and your economic development ecosystem through a shared vision, through shared goals, actions, et cetera, for Waco's future. Our next steps, as Tracy mentioned, would be we request your feedback on this portion of the project by July 8th. In the meantime, we are going to be developing recommendations associated with the goal areas, some strategies, some actions. We'll be identifying best practices that correspond with those goals and strategies so we can learn from what other people are already doing in these areas and kind of tailor that to the local context. Longer term, we're looking at a potential opportunity workshop in August. That's when we'll be able to dive a little bit deeper into some of those recommendations that our team will be developing. With that, I will pause and say thank you so much for your time today, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Comments?
I don't have any questions, but I'll start the comment. Thank you so much for the presentation and the deck there, Tracy and Jen. Very good. It seems like we're moving in the right direction on what our initiative is here. And it's exciting. And every time I think about it, how Waco has changed so much, really in the last 5 or 6 years, and the branding, kind of a organic branding, if you will, I know some of us on this council do a lot of travel, and you'd say where you were from, Waco, and they'd have all the horror stories about our deep, dark past. And but now you travel, and they want to talk about Baylor, Fixer Upper, what a cool place it is, and and 100 other things about Waco that are great. So I'm glad that we're focusing our economic development efforts, and I like all the points they're hitting, and the data that's here it's data heavy. I love it. Ultimately the attraction and retention of businesses is important, and I think I hate to think we're at a point where we can get selective about who we incentivize to come here, but I think that's part of how we've grown in the last 3 or 4 years, that we can say here's really what we need, and then kind of go after or prioritize and identify it, prioritize it, and figure out how to make that happen. So hopefully that's going to be one of the results of what we're talking about here. And I love you helping us direct, because the economic development is very important to me, and I think this council, for all parts for all Wacoans also. And I like how you hit on that part of it, because ultimately economic development is a means to an end. What do we want economic development to bring to Waco? And a lot of it is retention of some of the things that we already have, and as we continue success, that all Wacoans can share in that success, and in an equitable manner, and you've got that kind of incorporated in your little plan here. So I'm excited about what this the direction it goes, and helping us get more definitive on approaches that we take to economic development. So thanks. It's looking good. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Kent. I so enjoyed sitting down with the three of y'all yesterday and talking. And while we were having this conversation yesterday, I felt like it was so dynamic. And then I saw the presentation and I was like, oh, nothing that I said was original. You are hearing clearly what our community is saying. And I feel like our community is so well reflected in this slide deck. you captured so many different pieces. I think as I was watching the slide deck, I was thinking of, this feels like a French braid. Like you're pulling all of these different pieces from across the city and weaving them together really beautifully into something that is cohesive and clear. So I am really excited, like what Holmes was saying, to see how this propels us forward. I love that there will be an annual action plan. I love seeing the range of community residents whose voices are being reflected in this. I've been in several conversations about housing in 2022, and something that I keep hearing in the housing realm is the way that housing is economic development, and we have to see the way that those are so intrinsically linked. And I really appreciated some of the specific comments that y'all made around housing, and that I think as a city, we think of ourselves as being affordable, but in terms of our area and median income, we're actually not an affordable city along housing lines. And that is a really important takeaway, I think, for our council and for me in particular. So thank you for naming that in specificity. We have had so many conversations for the last decade, and I'm sure long before I got here, about the brain drain that we're seeing from our community, and there's been so much work to try to keep Baylor students here. But as you were listing the cities of Austin and Houston and Dallas and Denver and Nashville, I was thinking in my head of the friends that I have from grad school that live in each one of those cities, and thinking about how we can continue to partner with the external student body vice president at Baylor to really be in front of those students as freshmen and sophomores and juniors and seniors and graduate students, to woo them to love WACO and to get involved. And something Councilmember Barefield says that I really appreciate is vote where you sleep, to get them registered in WACO, to have them show up in our local elections. So this just feels like a masterpiece of conversations that have existed in our community for a really long time that y'all have pulled together masterfully. So thank you, and that was just such a stunning slide deck. So the visual representation was awesome too.
Thank you.
Thank you for this presentation. In our interview yesterday, as I was sitting there, I was thinking about a lot of things that has happened to the city of Waco since I was born here and raised here. I've seen the many changes. And so I appreciate the interview and how y'all made me think yesterday about the what fors and the how comes and how did we. The only thing I would ask is our workforce. I know that we keep mentioning Baylor, but TSTC is also a strong college here for a lot of our residents and out of town residents that come to TSTC to get educated and to learn a workforce position. And I know they have a strong college workforce training program over there, and I'd like to see us really work more hand in hand with the workforce at TSTC, because those are our average four-year college students that will be going there, and those are people of all ages that go there as well. And I know ages are welcome at every college, but I think more so at TSTC. So I really would like to see us, as far as workforces, join hands closer with TSTC. But thank you for this and the opportunity for us to share our thoughts about the city of Waco. So thank you for this report. I was looking at it, and some of the things that I said yesterday is on there, but it looked like everybody said just about the same thing I did. So thank you for this report, and I really appreciate the friendliness that you three opened up to me yesterday. I felt very comfortable going in there and sharing with you my ideas and my thoughts. So thank you.
Well, you have to know that Waco speaks Waco. And I think it's incredible that, and I'm so excited that regardless of your pedigree, regardless of, and I'm speaking directly to you, Tracy, this is home, and it's important, and not that, you know, other economic developers would not be, but I think you take it differently, and it is felt and appreciated. So I think that the camaraderie is just because it's home folks. But thank you all for this work and the commitment. Thank our staff for the due diligence, because I know that gathering all of these thought leaders is not easy. And so we appreciate the time and effort that it takes to do that. I am as excited about this study as I am about WACO's disparity study, but moreover that they are working in tandem together, because I think that what it does is will reveal the truth, real truth about where we are. So from a disparity perspective, so then we can actually make informed decisions on what we need to do, because we have that established truth, and that is going to speak volumes about the future of our community. I agree with Councilmember Rodriguez wholeheartedly in our efforts with TSTC. One of the things, though, TSTC's business model is that their students are placed, and they make money on where their students are placed, and their students are placed at the highest paying jobs. Well, I know that we've been intentionally making changes that WACO is in line with those other cities. And, you know, that's a part of this economic development movement. And what do we need? What are we missing? You know, what has worked, what has left, as mentioned in the slide deck, where we have potential growth, you know, where we're working to enhance skill sets in that middle skills gap, and what we can do to make changes to that and to address that specifically. So I'm super excited about that. I know that you've talked to a great number of people, but I know that there's still more people that you will hear from. I know from as high level as it is, I think it's intentional for us to really speak to the people that this impacts directly. And so I appreciate the fact that you're willing, you know, that you have said that you will incorporate and led that you would incorporate, you know, many different members of our community in this conversation, and that the work is not yet done. And so there will be lots of people that you'll be speaking to so that we can get a true reflection of our community and city. In all of that, to say, did have one question. The Opportunities Workshop that comes, tell me more about that, or just theoretically, who's there, what we walk away with. Tell me more.
Sure, I'll start. So for the Opportunity Workshop, typically what we'll do is we have a steering committee made up of folks from a variety of different organizations. That will be one stop on that workshop to really kind of dig into some of the strategies. We'll also be reaching out to council to make sure that, you know, your voices are seen, heard, and reflected in this. And then we also often follow up with folks that we've engaged with through that stakeholder process. Especially, you know, experts in education, for example, will, you know, talk to you and make sure, did we capture this correctly? Should we change something? And that's typically the stops that we make along that route. Tracy?
Yeah, and I want to thank you all. The steering committee that we have is very engaged in this process. They are actually reviewing that framework that we presented to you today. So I'm sure we're going to get a lot of feedback and reactions and marked up decks, but that's what we welcome. So I think the Opportunity Workshop is just that. It's an opportunity to take a deep dive on the strategies that we're going to present and help us understand where the opportunities are in this city. And then we're able to really build a strong action plan.
Thank you.
I'll wrap us up here. Andre alluded to this, but I'm going to be really specific. Tracy has an incredible resume, working for multiple governors throughout the country in their economic development offices, and has built out economic development plans for cities of all sizes, including those much larger than Waco, even recently. But she's also from Waco, and so it's a real unique opportunity for us to get to partner with this firm. This week is the 4th of July, and I love celebrating the promise and hope of America. And I believe this plan has the opportunity to really bring the American dream to every member of our community. I am convinced that Waco is the land of opportunity, but it's going to take strategy and proactivity to really make sure that that opportunity is fully achievable. And it's consistent with our culture in Waco to deploy that strategy and proactivity to build out an even stronger economy where everyone can not only achieve financial security, but also achieve their dreams. And I think that this plan is the next step for that becoming a reality. I want to thank our city staff for their hard work. Kent and your team in economic development, it's really great that looking at this specific consideration slide of the presentation and seeing the scope of work that's being covered is right on point, I believe, with where we need to go in our economic development office to really achieve the full opportunity for Waco. So really excited to see the end product here. I know that we'll get you some more commentary or some notes as well, but I think that we are focusing on exactly the right things to build out the diversified economy, the Waco that everyone wants, and a Waco where everyone can win. So look forward to the days ahead, and can't thank you enough for this update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And next, I believe we have one public hearing for tonight, and that is public hearing 2022-399.
You want to go out of work session into the business session?
Sure. We'll now we will now adjourn the work session and reconvene for the business session. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Sorry.
Works for me.
Okay. And our first matter in the business session is public.
Mayor, I think I may have made a mistake because I think he is actually doing a work session.
Okay.
Yeah, but he can do it as part of the public hearing.
Right. Public hearing 2022-399.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We did want to give you a quick work session over the proposed ordinance real quick, and then we'll go into the public hearing. So this is a proposal. We did get a request for a house museum in Waco, and our current ordinance does not address house museums in it. So we felt like it was appropriate to amend our ordinance to include it in it. So it's made up of 3 parts. It includes a definition of house museum, where they're permitted by right and special permit, and then some parking requirements for house museum. So the definition for house museum, we did take this from the National Association of Museums with a qualifier that it does have to be a recorded Texas historic landmark, just to make sure it's a legitimate historic resource. And you can see the definition there. And then it's allowed by special permit in our residential zoning districts. Again, this is to make sure that it is compatible in our residential neighborhoods. So it will have to go through a special permit process through the Plan Commission and Council for approval. And then it's permitted by right in our office and commercial zoning districts. And then we do have some parking requirements, and there's 2 options. You can either use the square footage of the house, 1 space for every 400 square feet, and then, or you could use, if you're limiting it to just tours, you can have 1 space per every 3 persons on the tours, and that would have to be, off-street parking. Just for reference, we do have 31 registered historic Texas landmarks in Waco. 15 of them are houses, and out of those 15, 5 are in residential zoning. So 5 of those would require special permit if somebody wanted to do a house museum in those 5. The historic Waco Foundation houses, we did check to make sure that they would fit under this ordinance. They are all located in either commercial and office zoning, so they are in areas that are permitted by right under this proposal, and they do meet the proposed parking requirements, so those would be in conformance with the proposed ordinance. And I'd be happy to take any questions before we go into the public hearing.
Staff?
No.
Just something that just popped into my mind, Clint. What about St. Francis Catholic Church? Is that old enough to be a historic house museum, or has anybody ever applied from that particular church, or is it even old enough to be considered a historic?
It's definitely old enough. I'm looking on this list. I don't see it on this list, so
So maybe it hadn't been applied.
they would
for
have to apply to
RT2.
get a state.
They've got to apply to be a historic landmark.
Okay, so I can
That's
go
it,
to the
yeah.
father and tell him.
Yeah.
But then something else. Then they would be under stricter requirements to if something happens to the church, like in the baptismal place or whatever inside the church, they have to ask for permission and follow certain guidelines to fix it, right?
Yeah.
And that might be why they probably don't want to.
There are additional requirements if you're designated
I know the
state marker.
house that goes with the church, I think it's older than the church. So I guess that must be one of the reasons why they've never applied for a historic thing. But anyway, I was just wondering. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Clint? Then we will open a public hearing on this item. Is there anyone here to speak on this matter? If not, we will close the public hearing and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mayor, let me read the, I think we need Clint, before y'all take a vote, to read the caption for this ordinance.
Sure. So, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending various sections in Chapter 28 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, Texas, for the purposes of adding a definition for house museum, allowing house museum as a special permit use in the R1A, R1B, R1C, R2, R3A, R3B, R3C, R3D, and R3E zoning districts, allowing house museum as a permitted use in O1, O2, O3, C1, C2, C3, C4, and C5 zoning districts, providing parking requirements for such a use, repealing all ordinances or part of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for inclusion in the code, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining that the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. Plan Commission did vote 9-0 to recommend approval of the ordinance amendment as proposed.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Bearfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Aye.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries. Are there any council member reports on committees, boards, commission liaison visits? If not, then are there any council requests for the scheduling of future agenda items? Well, if there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 11:50, and I'll note that we have some lunch for everybody in the room next door. Thanks, everybody.